My name is Margaret, and I am 65 years old. I spent my entire life working hard, saving money, and raising a family that I thought would always be there for me. But life has a strange way of teaching us lessons. It all started when my family decided to go on a vacation together. My daughter, her husband, my two grandchildren, and even my younger sister were all coming along. They told me, "Mom, you don't have to worry about anything. Just come and relax." But deep down, I knew how my family had been treating me lately. They thought I was old, weak, and useless. They never asked for my opinion anymore, never included me in their plans. I was always the last to know about everything. When we arrived at the luxury hotel, I was the one carrying the bags while my daughter and her husband walked ahead laughing and whispering. At the reception desk, the manager politely asked for payment. My family just stood there in silence, pretending not to hear. I understood immediately. They had expected me to pay. So I pulled out my gold credit card and paid for all 6 rooms without saying a word. The manager smiled at me with respect, but my family didn't even thank me. Instead, they walked away, leaving me alone in the lobby with the luggage. As I sat there, I felt abandoned. They didn't wait for me, didn't help me, didn't even acknowledge the fact that I had just spent thousands of dollars for their comfort. For the first time in my life, I felt invisible to the people I loved the most. That night, while everyone was asleep in their comfortable rooms, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of mine. My heart was heavy. But then, a thought crossed my mind. What if I took back what they had taken for granted? Quietly, I slipped out of bed, took my purse, and walked down to the front desk. The lobby was silent except for the faint sound of the night clerk typing on a computer. I leaned in and said, "Cancel all the rooms that were paid with this card." The clerk hesitated. "Madame, are you sure? That means—" "Yes," I interrupted. "Cancel them all. They don't deserve it." And with that, I signed the cancellation form. My hands trembled, but my heart felt stronger than it had in years. I went back upstairs, knowing that by morning, everything would change.
The next morning, I woke up before everyone else. I couldn't sleep much after what I had done at the front desk. My heart was racing, half from guilt, half from a strange new sense of power I hadn't felt in years. By 6 o'clock, the sun was just beginning to rise. I sat by the window in my room, sipping a small cup of coffee I had ordered for myself. The silence was almost peaceful, until the first scream echoed down the hallway. It was my daughter. I stepped out into the corridor and saw her in her pajamas, hair messy, arguing loudly with a hotel staff member. "What do you mean the room is canceled?" she shouted. Her husband came out behind her, rubbing his eyes, looking just as confused. Within minutes, the entire family was in chaos. My sister stormed into the hallway, holding her purse, demanding to know why the front desk had locked her out of her room. The children were crying because their cartoons had gone off when the power in their room was cut. I stood quietly, just a few steps away, watching them all panic. Nobody noticed me at first. They were too busy blaming each other. "Did you forget to pay?" my sister snapped at my daughter. "No, Mom was supposed to handle it," my daughter yelled back. Her husband added bitterly, "I told you she couldn't manage something this big. She's too old." That was the moment I cleared my throat and spoke. "Actually," I said, softly but firmly, "I paid for every room." They all turned toward me. Their faces froze. For a moment, there was complete silence in the hallway. Then my daughter frowned. Then why are we locked out? Why is everything canceled? I smiled faintly. Because last night, while you all were sleeping comfortably, I went down to the front desk and I canceled it all. The shock on their faces was something I will never forget. My grandchildren stopped crying, staring at me wide-eyed, not understanding, but sensing the tension. You, what? My daughter gasped. You can't be serious, Mom, my sister barked. Her husband threw up his hands. Do you know how embarrassing this is? Everyone's watching. Indeed, other guests had opened their doors to see what the commotion was about. Some even chuckled quietly, shaking their heads at the family drama unfolding in the middle of the hallway. I took a deep breath and continued. For years, I have given everything to this family. My money, my time, my energy, my love. And what do I get in return? Disrespect? Abandonment? Last night when I paid for all of you, not one of you said thank you. Not one of you waited for me in the lobby. You left me behind like I was nothing. So yes, I canceled the rooms. Because if I am nothing to you, then so is my money. The words hit them like a storm. My daughter's face turned red. You're being dramatic, Mom. We didn't mean to hurt you. I raised my eyebrows. Didn't mean to? Do you even realize how many times you've done this to me? How many times you've made me feel invisible? Nobody spoke. The manager arrived then, holding a clipboard. Ma'am, just confirming, the cancellations were processed. If you and your family still need rooms, they will have to rebook and pay a den today. Unfortunately, prices have gone up since yesterday. My family turned pale. The vacation they had planned so casually was suddenly slipping through their fingers. My son-in-law pulled my daughter aside, whispering angrily, "This is going to cost a fortune now. What are we supposed to do?" For the first time in many years, I felt calm, in control. I turned to the manager and said, "Thank you. I'll keep my own room. The rest can decide for themselves." And with that, I walked back into my room, leaving them speechless in the hallway. Inside, I closed the door, leaned against it, and allowed myself a small smile. For once, I wasn't the weak one, the forgotten one. For once, they had to face the consequences of their actions. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The vacation had only started, and the real drama was yet to unfold. The hallway was still buzzing with noise as I closed my door behind me. For a moment, I leaned against it and listened. My daughter's voice rose above the others. "This is ridiculous. How could she do this to us?" Her husband snapped back. "Don't put this on me. You said she would pay. You said she always does." Then my sister's sharp voice cut through. "Well, maybe if you two weren't so entitled, this wouldn't have happened. Margaret has always been generous, but you treated her like a servant." I almost laughed. My sister, who herself had often taken advantage of me, was suddenly pretending to defend me. Hypocrisy at its finest. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the chaos unfold in the courtyard below. Guests were coming in and out, taxis pulled up, children laughed in the distance. Meanwhile, my family was trapped in their own storm. A knock came at my door. "Mom, please open up." It was my daughter's voice. I didn't answer. Another knock, this time firmer. My son-in-law. "Margaret, this isn't funny. We have children here. They need a place to stay." Still, I remained silent. I wanted them to feel what I had felt, ignored, unheard, invisible. After several minutes, the knocking stopped. Instead, I heard them arguing again in the hall. "We can't afford 6 rooms at the new price," my daughter said, panic creeping into her voice. "Then maybe if we should just get 2 rooms and share," my sister suggested. The husband growled, "That's not what I signed up for. I wanted a luxury vacation, not some cheap arrangement." Their voices grew louder until even the children began to whimper. Finally, I sighed, put down my cup, and opened the door. They all turned to look at me at once. Their faces were a mixture of anger, desperation, and shame. "Come in," I said quietly. They hesitated, then stepped inside. My daughter was the first to speak. "Mom, you can't do this. We came here to have a family vacation. You're ruining it." I looked straight into her eyes. "No, you ruined it the moment you abandoned me in the lobby. Do you remember what you said when we planned this trip? That I should just relax and not worry? Yet the very first moment, you pushed the burden on me." She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised a hand to stop her. "All of you," I said, looking around the room, "have taken my kindness for granted. For years, you expect me to pay, to sacrifice, to give, while you give nothing back. Not even respect." My son-in-law scoffed. "Respect doesn't pay the bills." I stood up slowly, walking toward him. My voice was calm but firm. "And money without respect is worthless. Do you think I enjoy spending thousands of dollars just to be treated like a ghost? Do you think I saved all my life only to become your ATM?" His face flushed red, but he didn't reply. Then I turned to my grandchildren, who were sitting quietly on the bed, confused and scared. My voice softened. "And you two, I love you more than anything. But what kind of example would I be setting if I let my parents treat me this way? You need to see that love is not about money. Love is about respect." The room went silent. For the first time, I saw my daughter's eyes water. She looked down at the floor, ashamed. "Mom, I'm sorry." But her husband wasn't ready to surrender. "So what now? You want us to beg? You think this little stunt makes you powerful?" I smiled faintly. "No, this isn't about power. It's about dignity, something I will never give up again." At that moment, the hotel manager knocked politely and peeked in. "Excuse me, but I need a decision. Either the family rebooks the rooms or they will need to check out today." Everyone turned to me. For years, they had depended on me to make the final call, but this time I shook my head. "No," I said firmly. "I already have my room. The rest is up to them." The color drained from my son-in-law's face. My daughter began to cry quietly. My sister muttered something under her breath, but even she knew there was no point in arguing anymore. For the first time in decades, I had drawn a line, and I wasn't moving. I sat back down with my tea, while my family stood frozen in the middle of the room, forced to face the consequences of their selfishness. And deep inside, I knew this was only the first lesson. More would come, because for the rest of this vacation, I wasn't going to be their servant anymore. The tension in the room was so thick, it was almost suffocating. My daughter sat on the edge of the bed, wiping her tears, while her husband paced back and forth, muttering curses under his breath. My sister folded her arms and looked out the window, clearly angry, but too proud to admit she had no solution. The children clung to each other, whispering, "What's happening? Why can't we stay?" Finally, my son-in-law snapped. "This is nonsense. I'll call the credit card company and book new rooms myself." He pulled out his wallet, only to freeze. Slowly, he opened it, then looked around nervously. "Where's my card?" My daughter gasped. "Don't tell me you left it at home?" His face turned red. I thought you had it. You always keep it." Within seconds, they were arguing again. The truth was clear. They had come on this vacation with little to no money of their own, expecting me to cover everything as usual. I sipped my tea quietly, watching them unravel. My sister finally turned to me. "Margaret, you've made your point. Now stop this. Book the rooms again. We can pay you back later." I raised an eyebrow. "Later? Just like the last time and the time before that? You all promise, but the money never comes. I end up carrying the weight alone." She opened her mouth, then shut it, knowing I was right. "Mom," my daughter said softly, her voice trembling, "please, the kids, they need a place to sleep. Don't punish them for our mistakes." Her words pierced my heart. I looked at my grandchildren, innocent, scared, and caught in the middle of this mess. A part of me wanted to cave in, to hand over my card again. But then I remembered all the times I had been used, all the nights I cried alone, wondering if I even mattered. I shook my head. No, this is not punishment. This is reality. If you want a place to stay, you'll have to figure it out yourselves. The manager, who was still standing politely at the door, cleared his throat. There is one option. We have a family suite available, one room, but it can fit all of them. It is much cheaper than booking separate rooms. My son-in-law looked horrified. One room? With all of us? That's ridiculous. But my daughter quickly interrupted him. "We'll take it," she said, desperation in her voice. The manager nodded. "Very well. Please settle the payment at the desk." They froze again. Without my card, they had no way to pay. Slowly, every pair of eyes turned toward me. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands. "I will lend you the money for the suite, but only under one condition." "What condition?" my sister asked cautiously. "That from now on, you treat me with respect. No more abandoning me. No more treating me like I don't matter. If I am part of this family, then I deserve to be treated like it." Silence. Finally, my daughter whispered, "I promise." She looked at her children and added, "We all promise." Even my sister, though reluctantly, nodded. My son-in-law gritted his teeth, but with everyone staring at him, he finally muttered, "Fine." I handed the manager my card, but only for the one family suite, not 6 luxury rooms, just one simple space where they would all be cramped together while I enjoyed my own private room. As they gathered their things and followed the manager out, my daughter paused at the door. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was sincere. "Thank you, Mom. I'm sorry for everything." When the door closed behind them, I sat alone in the quiet once more, but this time I didn't feel abandoned. I felt strong. For the first time in years, I was no longer invisible. And as I looked out at the golden sunset over the hotel gardens, I knew one thing for certain. This vacation was no longer theirs. It was mine. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I walked through the hotel garden alone. The air was warm, filled with the scent of flowers and the sound of crickets. For the first time in years, I felt free. Nobody was rushing me, nobody was ordering me around. Meanwhile, my family was being escorted to their new family suite. I didn't follow them, but I could already imagine the scene. My son-in-law complaining about the small space, my sister snapping about the lack of privacy, the children crying because they had to share a sofa bed. Later that night, as I returned to my room, I heard it all. The thin walls did little to hide their voices. "This is unbearable," my son-in-law's angry voice thundered. "There's only one bathroom. I can't even get a shower without someone knocking on the door." My sister shot back, "Well, at least you have a bed. I'm stuck on the floor with a pillow." The children whined, "It's too hot. It's too noisy. I want my own room." I smiled to myself, unlocking my own door. Inside, my room was cool and quiet. A large bed with soft white sheets, a television, fresh fruit on the table, and a balcony overlooking the pool. Luxury, peace, and privacy. All mine. I drew myself a warm bath, something I rarely did at home, and soaked in the water until my skin wrinkled. With every passing minute, I let go of years of resentment and guilt. This wasn't revenge. It was balance. For once, I wasn't last. I wasn't invisible. The next morning, I went down to the breakfast buffet. The hotel had laid out a beautiful spread, fresh pastries, omelets, fruits, and coffee. I filled my plate and sat by the window, enjoying the quiet start to my day. Half an hour later, my family stumbled in. They looked exhausted. My daughter's hair was a mess, the kids were cranky, and my son-in-law had dark circles under his eyes. They carried their plates of food, but when they saw me sitting alone, comfortably enjoying my meal, they hesitated. "Good morning," I said cheerfully, sipping my coffee. My daughter tried to smile, but it was weak. "Morning, Mom." They all squeezed onto a small table nearby, bumping elbows, dropping cutlery, and arguing over who should get the last croissant. I couldn't help but notice how miserable they looked compared to me. By the second night, their suite had turned into chaos. My sister complained about snoring, the kids argued nonstop, and my son-in-law stormed out into the hallway more than once, yelling about needing space. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I visited the spa, lounged by the pool, and even struck up conversations with other guests, people who actually listened to me and treated me with kindness. One evening, I returned to my room with the small bouquet of flowers given to me by a friendly couple I had met. As I walked past the family suite, I heard shouting again. My daughter was in tears, my son-in-law was threatening to cut the trip short, and my sister was threatening to book a bus back home. I paused for a moment, listening, then I walked on, a soft smile on my face. For once, their chaos was not my responsibility. Inside my room, I placed the flowers on the table and sat down with a sigh of relief. This was what freedom felt like. But I knew the lesson wasn't over yet. My family had only just begun to realize what life without my support was like. Sooner or later, they would come to me, not for money, but for forgiveness. And when that time came, I would be ready.
By the third day of our vacation, the difference between my life and theirs had become painfully obvious. I was calm, rested, and even glowing from all the spa treatments. They, on the other hand, looked like they had been through a war. That morning, as I came down to breakfast in a fresh dress and a smile on my face, I noticed my daughter sitting alone at the table. Her eyes were puffy, as though she hadn't slept. She pushed her food around her plate without eating. "Good morning," I greeted her. She looked up, surprised, then lowered her eyes again. "Morning, Mom." For a long moment, we ate in silence. Then she finally whispered, "I didn't know how hard it would be without you." I set down my cup of coffee. "Without my money, you mean?" Her eyes filled with tears. "No, Mom, without you. I didn't realize how much you hold this family together. I treated you like a wallet instead of like my mother, and I'm sorry." The sincerity in her voice made my chest tighten. For years, I had dreamed of hearing those words, but a part of me still wondered if they were real or just temporary guilt. Before I could respond, her children came running in. "Grandma," they shouted, wrapping their little arms around me. "We don't like that room. It's too crowded. Can we stay with you?" I hugged them tightly, kissing their foreheads. "Of course, sweetheart. You are always welcome." But when I looked up, I saw my son-in-law standing by the doorway, his jaw tight, his pride wounded. He didn't say hello. He didn't apologize. Instead, he muttered, "We'll manage," and walked away. That evening, as I enjoyed the poolside with a book, my sister approached me. She looked tired and uncharacteristically humble. "Margaret," she said, lowering herself into the chair next to me, "I owe you an apology too. I've used you more times than I can count. I thought you were weak, always giving in, but now I see you're stronger than all of us. You had the courage to do what I never could." Her words surprised me. My sister was proud, stubborn, always convinced she was right. Hearing her admit this felt like a small victory. "I'm not stronger," I told her softly. "I just reached a point where I couldn't carry the weight anymore. Respect should not be begged for, it should be given freely." She nodded, slowly, staring at the pool lights reflecting in the water. "You're right." That night, I returned to my room to find a note slipped under my door. It was from my daughter. "Mom, I know we've treated you badly, but please don't give up on us. I promise I'll do better. Just give me a chance to prove it." I sat on my bed, reading the note over and over. My heart ached with love for her, but also with fear. Could I trust her words?
Would things really change, or would they go back to using me once this trip ended? I didn't sleep much that night. My mind was torn between forgiveness and caution. The next morning, the family came to my door together. My daughter was holding the children's hands, my sister stood behind her, and even my son-in-law, though clearly uncomfortable, was there. "Mom," my daughter said softly, "can we talk?" I let them in, bracing myself for whatever came next. They sat down awkwardly, and for the first time in years, I saw something new in their faces: humility. "Mom," my daughter began, her voice breaking, "I don't want to lose you. I don't want my kids to grow up thinking money is more important than love. I'm sorry for everything." The children nodded eagerly. "We love you, Grandma." Even my sister added, "She's right, Margaret. We've all been selfish. We need you. Not your money, but you." Then all eyes turned to my son-in-law. For a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, with a deep sigh, he muttered, I was wrong too. I treated you unfairly, and I'm sorry." It wasn't much, but it was something. I looked at them all, my heart torn between anger and love. For years, I had been invisible, but now, finally, they were seeing me, not as a wallet, but as a person. The power was in my hands now. Forgive or let them learn the hard way. I took a deep breath and said, "I'll think about it." Their faces fell, but I wasn't ready to give in just yet. For once, they would have to wait for my decision. And as they left my room, I realized this vacation was no longer about them. It was about me finding my voice, my dignity, and maybe, just maybe, teaching them to finally respect it. The day after my family came to apologize, I found myself sitting on the balcony of my room, staring at the ocean waves crashing against the shore. The horizon stretched endlessly, reminding me of the choices I still had ahead. For so long, I had been the one holding this family together, but now, for the first time, they had admitted their faults. The question was, should I forgive them so easily, or should I let them live with the consequences of their actions a little longer? As I sat there lost in thought, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my grandchildren standing there with small, nervous smiles. "Grandma," the little girl said, holding a seashell in her hand, "we found this for you." She placed it gently in my palm, and her brother added, "We don't want you to be mad anymore. We love you." Tears welled in my eyes. The innocence in their faces, the sincerity in their voices, it broke down walls I had built over years of hurt. I hugged them tightly. "I love you too, my darlings, and I will never stop loving you." Later that afternoon, my daughter came to see me. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she looked more determined than ever. "Mom," she said, her voice steady this time, "I know sorry isn't enough. I want to change. I don't just want to say the words, I want to prove it to you. Please, give me a chance." I studied her face carefully. For the first time in years, I saw the little girl she once was. The one who used to run to me after scraping her knee, the one who used to beg me to read her bedtime stories. That little girl had grown into a woman who had lost her way, but maybe, just maybe, she was finding her way back. Before I could reply, there was a knock at the door again. This time, it was my son-in-law. He stood awkwardly, his hands shoved into his pockets, eyes avoiding mine. I wanted to say something," he muttered. My daughter looked surprised, but stepped aside to let him in. He cleared his throat. "Look, I know I've been rude, ungrateful. Honestly, I thought of you as nothing more than a bank. That was wrong. I see that now. These past few days, crammed in that room, fighting over every little thing, it made me realize how much you've done for us, and how little I have appreciated it." I was stunned. For him to admit this much took effort. He continued, his voice lower now. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I do want to change. For my wife, for the kids, and for you." For a long time, the room was silent. My daughter squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. I took a deep breath. "You all hurt me deeply. Not just once, but over and over. Do you know how many nights I cried alone, wondering if I mattered to anyone?
Do you know how painful it is to be invisible in your own family?" They lowered their heads, ashamed. "But," I continued, my voice softening, "I can see something I haven't seen in years, true remorse. And maybe that's enough to begin again." My daughter's eyes lit up. "Does that mean you forgive us?" I held up a hand. "Forgiveness isn't a gift I can hand out like money. It's something that has to be earned. I will watch. I will wait. And if your actions match your words, then yes, I will forgive." They both nodded eagerly, relief flooding their faces. That evening, instead of returning to their crowded suite, my daughter and her husband asked if they could simply sit with me in my room. We ordered tea, shared a few quiet laughs, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like part of a family again. Not because of what I gave, but because of who I was. As the night ended, I walked them to the door. My son-in-law paused, turned back, and said, "Thank you for giving us a chance." I smiled faintly. "Don't thank me yet. Prove yourselves first." When they left, I stood on my balcony once more, looking at the starlit sky. My heart was lighter, but cautious. Trust takes time to rebuild. But one thing was certain. I was no longer invisible. They had finally seen me. And this time, I intended to stay visible.
The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of peace. The sun was rising over the ocean, casting golden light across the water. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel heavy. I felt hopeful. My daughter knocked on my door early. She was holding a breakfast tray, eggs, toast, and tea. "I wanted to bring this for you," she said softly. "Not because I have to, but because I want to." It was such a small gesture, but to me, it felt enormous. I smiled and invited her in. We ate together, just like old times when she was a little girl. Later that day, the entire family gathered on the beach. My son-in-law approached me nervously. "Margaret," he began, "I've booked us a family dinner tonight. No fancy hotel dining, just a small place by the shore. My treat." I raised an eyebrow. "Your treat?" He chuckled. "Yes, mine. I want to do something for you for once." That evening, we all sat at a cozy seaside restaurant. The children played in the sand, my daughter chatted with me about memories from her childhood, and my son-in-law served food with his own hands. He looked different, humbled. At one point, he raised his glass and said, "To Margaret, the strongest woman we know. We promise we'll never forget what you've done for us and who you are." Everyone clinked their glasses. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were happy tears. After dinner, as we walked back under the starlit sky, my daughter slipped her hand into mine. "Mom," she whispered, "I don't want to lose you again. Thank you for giving us another chance." I squeezed her hand. "You almost did lose me, but now I think you've finally found me again." The waves crashed softly against the shore, and I knew this chapter of my life had closed, not with bitterness, but with strength. I had shown my family that love is not something to be taken for granted. It must be nurtured, respected, and returned. For years, I had been invisible, but now I was seen, truly seen, and that was worth more than all the money in the world. The end.